Good evening, or actually good afternoon. This is Brad and Kathy Cook, and we're pleased to share our memories of the history of the Bishop's Charitable Assistance Fund with you this interesting year when we're getting together virtually and not in person. Way back at the beginning, 35 years ago, Bishop Odar Gendron, who was the Bishop of the Diocese of Manchester, realized there was a need that he had because he received a lot of requests for charitable assistance from non-Catholic organizations in the community who thought that the diocese somehow had funds available for that purpose, and indeed it did not. He went to Monsignor John Molan, the Vicar General, who was responsible for a lot of these things, and asked him to begin a fundraising effort that could try to address these needs in the community. They knew about the Cardinals' reception in Boston, which supported Catholic Charities of the Archdiocese of Boston, and thought a similar reception might work well in New Hampshire for this purpose. Monsignor Molan got in touch with me and a number of other people and said, how are we going to do this? And we strategized, and we were lucky to locate Judge Flynn and his wife's house, beautiful home in Rye, overlooking the ocean, looking out at the Isles of Shoals, where the first several receptions were held. They weren't overwhelmingly attended. They were a brand new effort. We called everybody we could. We invited friends. We invited people from the office. I remember driving my senior partner, Jack Sheehan, to the first one, and the reception started. It was held in the Flynn residence for several years, and then it moved to the backyard of the Bishop's house on North River Road in Manchester. The purpose, as I said, was to start a fund that would enable the Bishop to serve the people of New Hampshire in a way that he had not served it before. Various people were asked to chair the fund, which was not an incorporated entity at that time, and various people did, coming from various religious backgrounds. Harold Ekman, a local Jewish businessman, owner of Ekman Construction Company, chaired the fund for a year, but in 1992 decided to run for the United States Senate because he was a political candidate in a campaign, and in fact, the week of the bishop's reception is the week of the primary. The diocese did not feel it was appropriate for him to chair the fund and was left in the spring of '92 with a vacancy in the chairmanship of the reception. Monsignor Molan came to us, as did Bishop O'Neill, and asked Kathy and me if we would chair the fund, stepping in what was kind of an emergency, and we agreed to do it. And that was the first of 3 years that we chaired the fund. Normally, people chair it for 2 years, but after 2 years of chairing it, unfortunately, Bishop O'Neill became ill. And when he was being consulted, or normally would have been consulted on who the next chair should be, he was in Catholic Medical Center. So Monsignor Molan came to us and said, would we chair it for a third time? And we agreed. One of my favorite memories of those 3 receptions were typically among the remarks at the reception itself were remarks from the chairs, and in this case, the co-chairs. And Kathy went first, and Bishop O'Neill turned to me and said, keep it short the first year. And then the next year we went, and Kathy knocked it out of the park again, and Bishop O'Neill said to me under his breath, just say goodnight. And I always thought that was kind of interesting. And he was such a wonderful, humble man. At the third reception, when he had regained some of his health, he came in and he was embarrassed and he said, I forgot my checkbook, can I come? And I said, yes, Bishop, we think you probably can come. In 2002, after there had been troubles in the church and problems that Kathy will talk about in a minute, we incorporated the fund. It had been called the Bishop's Summer Reception Fund, but when we incorporated it as the Bishop's Charitable Assistance Fund, a New Hampshire charitable corporation with its own board of directors, its own existence. It was initially incorporated by 5 incorporators, Silvio Dupuy, Al Ekman, who I mentioned, Patrick Duffy, Kathy Cook, and Brad Cook. We were pleased to have our names associated with it that way. One of the seminal points, for better or worse, in the history of the fund was the sex abuse crisis. And when that arose, we got involved again, and Kathy will talk a little bit about that.
That was a difficult time throughout the church in New Hampshire. Certainly impacted fundraising at every level. and the Bishop's Charitable Assistance Fund was impacted as well. I received a request from Bishop McCormick to meet with him in his office, and he asked me if I would be willing to chair the fund that year. The decision had made to go forward. There was a possibility to not hold it that year, but the decision had made to move on, and they needed to find someone who would be willing to take it on. And Bishop McCormick very graciously said he would not allow me or anyone else to take it on without his personal invitation and commitment to back us and total support. The reason I chose to go on then, when it was so difficult, was because this fund had always met people's really basic needs. And it didn't seem that a sex scandal in the church, as wrong as that was, should take help away from people with urgent needs. So we went on. It was an interesting year. Many people were struggling with the scandal, didn't give or didn't want to come. And in fact, I think that year we didn't actually hold the party. We just did fundraising. Others did give. They thought it through and realized the impact it had on people who needed it. And by continuing that year, it became a transition through to the future, and it has continued to grow since that time.
And Kathy did it for 2 years. The second year, we reestablished the reception itself on a smaller scale. And since that time, blessedly, it has continued to grow and grow and grow until we got to 2020, which is an anniversary year, obviously, for the fund, but a unique year with the pandemic. We've been very pleased and proud to be associated with the Bishop's Charitable Assistance Fund from the beginning, to have urged other people to contribute. And frankly, it's been a wonderful experience and a good time. It allows all of us to help the Bishop of Manchester, help the state of New Hampshire. So happy anniversary to the fund, and enjoy the virtual reception. Thank you very much.